Hello, everyone, and welcome to the 2023 Oregon Interfaith Earth Summit. I hope that people in various locations can hear us, so maybe give us a thumbs up or wave if you can hear and you're connected to what we're doing. So glad to have people joining from across the state, and we'll say hello from each of the different locations in a few minutes. But glad to see and be able to get a little bit of a window into the different places around the state where everybody is joining from, and hopefully your initial gatherings went well for this first half hour, and now we get to join together for the statewide portion. So my name is Cherise Bach, and I work as the Creation Justice Advocate at Ecumenical Ministries of Oregon. And we're also the Oregon chapter of Interfaith Power and Light. So we are bringing everyone together for this 10th annual summit. So this is the first time where we've done this hybrid option where people can gather in person in various locations around the state, as well as having a virtual time where we feel like we're kind of connected to each other across the state, as well as in person in the room with the people around us. So we hope that this hybrid format allows everyone to feel connected to other people of faith around the state for this statewide portion, and know that there are other people around the state who care about this planet and who are people of faith and who are working toward environmental and climate justice. And that this also provides you the opportunity to build relationships with others from your neighborhood, town, or region, so that you might be able to work together and support each other. So this is hopefully a little bit of the best of both worlds with that statewide feel, as well as being able to build local connections. So this year's summit theme is Care for Our Common Home, Building Neighborhood Climate Resilience. And while this planet is our common home, we also recognize that for most of us, we're living on stolen land from Indigenous people who were forcibly removed from the places they'd stewarded since time immemorial. Indigenous people are still among us, and some are present in our gatherings today. Indigenous people are still here, and building neighborhood climate resilience includes working toward healing the broken relationships with people and the land that many of our ancestors caused and benefited from. Caring for our common home requires a shift in perspective for many of us who grew up in the United States, a shift toward working together with the people and other species in our regions to participate in the long-term health of our region and to make sure everyone's needs are met. Rather than assuming we can always move somewhere else if we use up all the resources where we are, caring for our common home recognizes that this one planet is an incalculably precious gift, and that we have the joy and responsibility of passing it on to those who come after us. While taking care of the entire planet is too big for any one of us to do, or even our small faith communities and regional groups, we can contribute to the health of our own neighborhoods and regions, and through our choices, we can make sure that other regions do not have to be degraded for our own comfort. So building neighborhood climate resilience recognizes several things. First, that climate change is happening due to human causes, and we've taken more than the Earth can create each year. We've polluted the air, water, and soil. Second, we can halt and hopefully reverse some of the harm we've done by changing our practices, although we're running out of time to reverse some of the impacts. But every incremental thing that we do can help and make sure that the impact to people and other species is less than it would otherwise be. And third, it reminds us that as people of faith, we can do something to make our neighborhoods more resilient and ready to prepare and respond to the impacts of climate change that are happening and will continue to happen in the next decades. So by building these networks of relationships around the state, by working together on climate resilience now, we can make sure that our communities are prepared and have what we need to make sure that everybody can flourish even in the hard times that are in front of us. So I hope that you will enjoy building relationships today and learning some things and considering what might be the role of your faith community and yourselves in building neighborhood climate resilience in the coming months and years. So with that, I would like to invite each location to say a brief hello from where you're at. So I'll call on you and we can hear from each other around the state. And I will recommend that you might put it on speaker view if you want to be able to see who's talking most easily. So you might want to do that so you can see people as they pop up on screen. So I'll call on groups as I see them on my screen. So Portland, would you like to unmute and say hello first? Portland location.
Good afternoon.
There we go.
Good afternoon. My name is Teresa Fenzel, and I am here at the Old Magdalene Church with the gathering from Portland. And this gathering wishes blessings for all who are participating in this.
Thank you. Medford.
Everyone turn around. Say hi.
Hello. Good to see you all waving. Thank you. And Bend, I think Bend doesn't have audio capacity, but we are glad you're all here. Thanks so much for joining. And if you want to pop something in the chat, you can. They say, hello from Bend, east of the Cascade Mountains, where members of 6 congregations are meeting to work together for our earth and our beautiful local environment. Thank you. All right, and Salem. We see everyone waving. Thanks so much for being here, Salem. All right, and Eugene. We can see folks in Eugene waving to us. All right, and Florence.
Greetings from Florence. We're a little group that gets together. We've been working on climate change for months now and hoping to get our city council to take some action locally. But thank you for hosting us and blessings. We're at St. Andrew's Episcopal Church today, and I'm the vicar, Don Reynolds. So thank you. Oops. Mute.
Thanks, Florence and Corvallis.
Hello, rest of Oregon. Everybody wave. We've got about 4 different faith groups here and 3 different environmental groups. So we're looking forward to a good plenary session coming up.
Thanks so much. All right, and Dallas.
Wonderful to be with you. I'm Reverend Bonnie Tarwater. This is Church for Our Common Home, and we worship in the barn. And we're delighted and really excited to meet everybody and invite you to come to Dallas and visit us anytime. We want to be your friend and work with you.
Sounds like almost everyone is excited to be there. And that's great that you're meeting in a barn. It looks like a fun place to meet. Beaver Creek.
Hello.
Hello.
Welcome, glad you're here. And I think we have Newburgh somewhere, but now I'm not seeing it on the screen. So is the Newburgh group here? Hello, welcome, glad you're here. Thanks for showing us around the room. Welcome. All right, and I think that is everybody. Did I miss anybody that is coming from from a site? We have quite a few people here also virtually, so thank you for joining virtually. Some of you because you're far away from any of our locations, some of you due to illness, unfortunately, and for other reasons, people traveling and such. So I'm glad that we could have you joining us as well. So thanks to all the virtual participants too. So let's take a moment as we begin to ground ourselves in why we're here, that we come from different faith traditions, but we all share a conviction in holding care for this planet as part of our faith, and we have different reasons, but feel connected to this planet that is our common home together. So, as an opening reflection, I have asked Rabbi Ruhi Sophia Motzkin-Rubenstein from Temple Beth Israel in Eugene to share a reflection on Tu B'Shvat, the New Year for the trees. So, Rabbi Ruhi.
Thank you, Charisse, and thank you, EMO, and good to see all of you from around the state. Particular shout out to my friends in Eugene. I'm looking forward to joining you in person in an hour or so. So there's a beautiful confluence that this event falls the day that our New Year of the Trees, Tu B'Shvat, the 15th, the middle of the lunar month of Shvat, begins this evening. And very conveniently, because today is a Sunday, this is when at least my Jewish community is observing it as well. So I came from planting trees this morning at our local arboretum. It's part of our community's day of service. And I think it is a beautiful opportunity for us to ground ourselves as not alone in this work. Not just do we have each other, not just do we have the whole human community, but we have life working with us. And so I actually want to open us with a song. And if you are able to rise physically to your feet, or if you're not able to rise to your feet, but you're able to straighten your posture and lift your arms, I encourage you to do so. However you're willing to join this song. I've heard it in many places, but apparently I found online it's written by a woman named Betsy Rose, and just reminds us that we can take the same inspiration and nurturance that the rest of life does. So the song goes like this. I'm going to ask you to call in response. Please stay muted because Zoom singing together doesn't actually work, but those of you who are in regional hub groups should sound really good all together. So you can repeat after me. Standing like a tree with my roots down low. Your turn. And like a tree with my roots down low. Good. Branches wide open. Your turn. Branches wide open. Down comes the rain. You sing that. Good. Down comes the sun. Down comes the love to a heart that is open. Down comes the love to a heart that is open. All right, we're going to sing it a couple times. Open to be standing like a tree with my roots down low. Branches wide open. Down comes the rain. Down comes the sun. Down comes the love to a heart that is open to be standing like a tree with my roots down low. Branches wide open. Down comes the rain. Down comes the sun. Down comes the love to a heart that is open to be standing like a tree with my roots down low, branches wide open. Down comes the rain, down comes the sun, down comes the love to a heart that is open. Thank you. And in the spirit of remembering to not feel alone in this work, I want to share a quote from William McDonough, who wrote a book called Cradle to Cradle a few decades ago, and a documentary called The New Industrial Revolution that was about how we can design with climate and environmental, not just sustainability, but generativity in mind. And he says, if you look at a tree and think of it as a design assignment, it would be like asking you to make something that makes oxygen, sequesters carbon, fixes nitrogen, distills water, provides habitat for hundreds of species, accrues solar energy's fuel, makes complex sugars and food, changes colors with the seasons, creates microclimates, and self-replicates. Again, tree as a design assignment would be something that makes oxygen, sequesters carbon, fixes nitrogen, distills water, provides habitat for hundreds of species, accrues solar energy's fuel, makes complex sugars and food, changes colors with the season, creates microclimates, and self-replicates. So that's daunting for sure. And I think one truth about the work that we are talking about is it's daunting. It feels hard. It moves slowly. And what that quote also reminds me is that nature is already full of brilliance, and the world works just fine. We have some human messes that we need to figure out how to clean up, but the more we can take inspiration from how well the world works when we don't mess it up, the more we can be on track to do this work well and to remember that we are not alone.
Thank you so much, Rabbi Ruhi, for sharing that really inspiring message and reminder that we are already participating in the community of all life that knows how to be climate resilient. And so we get to join with that and participate amongst the other species. So that's exciting work and also challenging for us. So let's learn from the trees today, as well as from one another. So I'm excited to be able to introduce to you next our keynote speakers who come to us from Together New Orleans. And they are working with faith communities in New Orleans to create climate resilient communities as we speak. And so I wanted us to get a little bit of a window into what this work looks like in another part of the country, and some ideas that we might be able to take with us into our own congregations, and examples so that we can be encouraged by what they're doing in New Orleans, as well as to maybe do some of this similar work ourselves in the coming years. So I invite Asia Onubene and Abel Thompson to share with us the keynote address today.
All right, thank you very much, Therese. It's great to be here this afternoon. Let me share my screen right quick. All right, so we're going to share about neighborhood resiliency project or strategy we call Community Lighthouse. But first, I want to give you a little context on who we are as an organization. And I'm sorry, my name is Abel Thompson. I'm an organizer with Together New Orleans. And Asia, you want to introduce yourself?
Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for having us. I'm Asia Ognabine, also an organizer with Together New Orleans.
All right. So Together New Orleans is a broad-based organization, which basically means we're an organization of organizations, churches, mosques, synagogues, civic associations, neighborhood associations, unions, and what we do is we break the barriers that commonly historically divide us, race, socioeconomics, and religion, to come together and develop trust and relationships, strengthen leadership, all to build power to achieve change. So that's who we are, Together New Orleans. So this organization comes together from about 4 or 5 years of just building relationships with congregations and institutions around the city. We launched officially in December of 2021. And we have 54 member institutions when we launched, we had 54 member institutions pledging $120,000 worth of dues.
So as we kind of started our organization, we had a huge kickoff event, July of 2021. In August of 2021, August 29th, Hurricane Ida hit the coast of Louisiana. And while New Orleans wasn't hit, we still suffer the same problem we always do, in that we had widespread power outages. As we are no stranger to in Louisiana, power outages have become the leading cause of disaster-related death in South Louisiana and along the Gulf Coast. So even though in this instance, New Orleans was not hit by the hurricane, still 35 Louisiana residents lost their life. 29 of them were just from power outages. Of that 29, 21 of them were in New Orleans alone, and all we did was lose power. 6 of those deaths were from carbon monoxide poisoning. It was gas generators too close to the home or inside of the home. And 18 of those deaths were from excessive heat exposure, and that heat exposure causing other related deaths like cardiac arrest, things like that. We have a few pictures. We could go to the next slide, of some of the people that lost their lives in New Orleans from that heat exposure. And hurricanes and heat exposure know no bounds between race, religion, age. A few of these are some of the folks that passed away. I want to point out Miss Deborah Anderson was a retired organist from one of our member churches, Corpus Christi. Eiley Joseph there at the bottom was a member of one of our churches, Franklin Avenue Baptist Church. And David Sneed was a pastor at the New Orleans Baptist Seminary, which is an organization we work closely with, especially around disaster-related events. So I'll cue this up for Abel. This was an unexpected event right at the cusp of us really coming together as an official organization, and kind of a true test to what we were going to do next.
Yeah. So the day after Ida hit, we got on a Zoom call, and about 40 to 50 faith leaders got on this call, and it wasn't about strategizing or doing anything like trying to figure out how to put boots on the ground or anything like that. It was basically just to find out where people were and how they were doing. And of course, everybody was spread out across the Southeast United States, from Houston on up to Atlanta. And you know, the congregations were spread out. Nobody had power. The churches were out of power. And one story in particular that really was the impetus and the driver for this idea was one of our pastors got a call from his state representative asking him to if he could stand up a cooling station at his church. And he had to deny him. He didn't have power at his church. Like I said, his congregation was all spread out. They just didn't have the capacity to serve their community in their time of most need. And you know, that's what churches exist, to serve their community. So he was very kind of incensed that he was powerless in that time of need. So we had already been kind of looking at renewable energy and ways to make utility bills cheaper and ways to, you know, put less carbon into our atmosphere. So we kind of took what we were learning already, had more conversations, and we came up with this idea called the Community Lighthouse. And I'm gonna play this short 2-minute video to kind of give you an overview of what that is.
We don't have sound, Abel.
Asia, hold on, let me share. Try again.
So let's face it, in South Louisiana, we know more about natural disasters than we'd like to. With global warming getting worse every year and our electrical grid seems to be hanging by a thread, and no matter how many times we go through it and how much money we spend rebuilding, we never seem to create a plan for what to do when the lights go out. It's always been our drive, our tenacity, and our sense of community that brings us through in the end. So what if we stop waiting for somebody else and create the plan ourselves? The Community Lighthouse Project is a strategy built on a network of 85 congregations and community institutions across our community, each with solar panels and backup battery storage to serve as response hubs in a disaster. Nobody would live more than a 15-minute walk from the lighthouse, which becomes a safe haven that can help with food, shelter, and emergency services people need, which can operate even when the power grid is down. It also creates jobs and finally moves us towards renewable energy. Together New Orleans is taking the initiative to make this possible. It won't always be needed, but we'll know it's there, waiting for us.
All right, so the Community Lighthouse strategy is basically a strategy equipping our institutions with solar panels and backup battery storage. So like the video says, so that we can be resilience hubs in the event of a major disaster or a major power outage. And it's kind of 3 components to this strategy. First is to expand the network of response institutions. One thing we learned after Ida is that, the existing response network is reactive and lacks capacity when the whole city goes out. The city agencies and other volunteer agencies they just can't do it alone. So we really learned that this has to be a full community effort to really expand the network of resiliency in the city. Second is to build the infrastructure. 85 our vision is 85 institutions just in New Orleans and more across the state of Louisiana. So we've built relationships with a solar development company that has gone out and done site analysis and learn what they need to equip the institution to be most efficient. And then we start building that structure. And then third, and Asia's going to get to this more in depth later in the presentation, but it's train the team. So to have disaster response teams embedded in each institution so that they know their neighborhood, they know their equipment, they know their facility, they know what to do when the outage comes, so that when the disaster comes, rather, so that they can be ready ahead of time for when the lights go out. So we decided to start, like I said, we wanted 85 institutions around the city, but we decided to start with phase 1 with 16 locations in New Orleans. And we've mapped these locations out and really prioritized the most vulnerable areas using census tract data to know which areas have the highest population of folks that stay or have to stay after a hurricane, which areas have the highest population of folks that might be on medical equipment that just can't get out of their homes. So these are the 6 locations that we started with. And then this will be the full implementation of the 86. And then we also identified 8 locations outside of Louisiana. We have parishes instead of counties in Louisiana. So we have 8 parishes where we'll have lighthouses throughout the state, and plan to grow and scale that out over the next few years. And we're excited to say that we have our first 3 lighthouses in New Orleans already, pretty much the construction complete on pretty much 3 lighthouses in New Orleans, from left to right: Bethlehem Lutheran Church, Broadmoor Community Church, and the Crescent Care Health Center, which is a big, fairly federally qualified health center.
Great. So having the solar panels and the backup batteries for storage are perfect. They're great. They help the grid resiliency, but that doesn't really mean anything if we don't have the teams responding to disasters as they come and even before they come. So the 3rd phase in our implementation plan is to build teams at these lighthouses and train them in disaster response. So what we'll be doing is working with each congregation, health center, civic center to build teams that they'll be their community lighthouse teams. And these teams will be the ones responsible for responding at their lighthouse. So these teams will get trained in disaster response. What we're thinking is kind of like a Boy Scout type disaster response, in which they'll be trained in different items. They'll have chainsaw training, assessment training, and they'll get like little badges that let us know this person is qualified to go out into the neighborhood and check on generators and make sure they're not too close to the home, or they can help clean up, or they can help with a food distribution, things like that. Each lighthouse and their teams will identify turf, and what turf is they'll map out an area around their lighthouse, and they are responsible for the households and the residents within that area. So what that means is doing year-round canvassing, in which they are building relationships and getting to know their neighbors, so that before disaster ever strikes, they'll have what we'll call a 24-hour outreach list or 24-hour response list, so that they have all the names of the folks who, within 24 hours after widespread power outage, they know that they need to check up on this resident, make sure that they have their needs met. So like I said, that gets canvassed throughout the year. So you're not just, making a phone call once a year. Miss Johnson down the street, oh, she knows who we are. No, we're going to be checking up on Miss Johnson even before a storm is forming in the Gulf or anything like that, so that we have that relationship with her and she knows that she can trust us to help her out in a disaster. And then year round, we will have like an annual disaster response scenario. So that is when we'll have a preset plan to get with these teams, make sure that they are up to date on not only their disaster response training, but we will turn off their power to make sure that their systems are operating as usual, make sure anything funky is taken care of, and like making sure they know how to turn on their system. We are going to be splitting the lighthouses up based on their capacity. So we expect each lighthouse to at least be an area that can do cooling and heating stations, food distribution, charging stations, and like portable battery distribution. After the tornadoes that hit Arabi in New Orleans in 2022, we set up a portable battery library in which we just got these small portable cell phone batteries, charged them, and let folks know where they are. They came and pick them up like a library loan out books. They sign their name. They could use that battery until it's dead, and then when it dies, they bring it back and get a fresh battery. And then some light medical equipment will be available at different lighthouses depending on their capacity and their availability. So the lighthouses will be split up into tiers. Our Our first tier, tier 1, is going to be a large facility that can house volunteers. It can hold up to, what we're saying, around 500 people at one time for food distribution and things like that. And there may be a space for secondary resources, such as being the main distribution point for other lighthouses. They may be or may be connected to government entities and can provide resources in that manner. Or they may be a space where we can set up counseling and consulting services for after disaster needs. A tier 2 lighthouse will also be a large building, can serve between 305 people at one time, but may not be able to cover those secondary resources like a tier 1 lighthouse, but still one that's fairly large. A tier 3 lighthouse will be a medium capacity lighthouse between 100 and 300 people. They can cover most of these services that you see on the left, if not all of them. And then a tier 4 lighthouse will be our smallest capacity lighthouse. They can do 100 people or less in their facility. Again, be able to have the same responsibilities as the other lighthouses. And then probably we'll be partnering with a larger lighthouse when it comes to turf and neighborhood canvassing. And then we'll have an auxiliary lighthouse, which those lighthouses are not meant to be cooling or heating centers or anything like that, but they're like the command center and the support hub for the other lighthouses. For example, our Together New Orleans office is slated to be a lighthouse, and that's where our staff will come together and do any data, make sure all lighthouses have all the supplies they need. We're keeping in touch with them, and we're connecting with city and state government to make sure everybody's working on the same page. Now, all of this is only possible because of the fundraising we've been doing. We've organized our people, and now we're organizing money to make sure this gets built. We have raised upwards of $9 million so far for our phase 1 lighthouses. That money comes from the Department of Energy, Greater New Orleans Foundation grants. Mayor LaToya Cantrell of New Orleans committed $2 million from city funds. And then Congressman Troy Carter allocated $3.8 million project funding for a lighthouse for 2023. So a lot of that is working with our organizations and working with our city and state government to make this dream a reality. And while we have worked with those entities in raising money, we cannot state enough how all of this is possible due to the connections we made with our congregations, our organizations, and the people that make those organizations run. They came to us with an issue that they wanted to work with, and then we made ourselves available for realizing that.
And that's the Community Lighthouse. Thank y'all for your time.
Thank you.
Do we want to take questions now, Sharice, or there'll be time for that later?
Yeah, I think we'll gather questions in the chat and send them along. And for those who are joining virtually, we can talk with you later. But we so appreciate your being willing to share with us, and we hope to continue building our relationship between our organizations so we can learn from each other as we do implementation. So thank you so much for all of your great work. It's really inspiring, and I love particularly the fact that this is growing out of the communities, the faith communities, and the needs of their neighborhoods, and that they're connecting with the people around them, not just the people in their congregations, but the people in their neighborhoods, finding out how to best serve the neighborhood and be involved and participate in preparing together as a community. So that's really exciting and gives us a sense of direction for how to do this work in our places as well. Thank you again.
Absolutely, thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah. One of the other things that I really appreciate is the idea of having one of these lighthouses every 15-minute walk. And so that works really well in urban areas. And also for those of us who are more out in rural areas, that may be doesn't quite work the same exact way, but we can have similar ideas. And so we also wanted to give an example from Oregon that is a more rural example. And so Chris Watson is going to share with us about the commissary project that the Warm Springs Community Action Group is working on. So Chris, would you please share with us?
Okay, I think I had an issue with my sound. Can you hear me now? I'm gonna.
Yes, we can hear you now.
Great. From the beginning, here it is. Okay, well, wow, that was it's a tough act to follow, the Together New Orleans folks. One thing that I think is really neat is that they're part of the same energy storage for social equity group that we at the Warm Springs Community Action Team are part of. That national group. We're working with Pacific Northwest National Labs. So they're way ahead of where we are. But so I really appreciate seeing the work that they're doing. But thank you, Charisse. And also thank you, John Pitney, who's here in this call today, for inviting me to speak. And thank you, each of you, for your commitment to caring for our planet. I'm really glad to be here today at the Oregon Interfaith Summit. A little bit about the Warm Springs Community Action Team. We're a 17-person nonprofit organization that does community development work on the Warm Springs Reservation. So working with alternative energy and solar has not necessarily been the main thing that we've worked on, but it is something that we're getting more and more into nowadays. And it's exciting work. We're excited to and happy to be doing this work. A little bit about the Warm Springs Reservation. I'm sure some of you have been there and driven through it. The reservation is home to about 4,500 people of the Warm Springs, Wasco, and Northern Paiute tribes. Those are the three tribes that comprise the Confederated Tribes of Warm Springs. The tribes came here after the Treaty of 1855, a few years after that. The reservation has a lot going for it: unique culture, heritage, languages, history, really interesting contemporary community, but it's filled with a lot of challenges. The economy is not strong. There's a 90% rate of retail leakage, for example, which means 9 out of every $10 earned on the reservation is spent off reservation. So the economy is not great. I will not go into every challenge that the reservation is facing today, other than to say that there are many. And it's difficult when there are all these different kinds of challenges confronting people, human issues, community members, day-to-day issues. It's difficult sometimes to think about issues relating to climate when you've got a million bread and butter issues facing the community, and tribal leaders are trying to deal with all of these things. And these challenges are rooted in, many different things, right? Many of them rooted in history, racism, etc. And the tribal government really does, I think, lack the capacity and the resources to handle a good many of the problems, which is why a little nonprofit like us, this little group of 17 people, 10 of them who are in this particular slide, takes on a lot of challenges that are gargantuan in nature sometimes. Our group does a lot of things to promote small business and workforce development, and we do education for personal and professional development, asset building, we have youth programs, placemaking, and now alternative energy projects. This team of people really do inspire me. A little story: about 10 years ago, when I first started working in Warm Springs, a community member named Richard Macy came to me and said, "It takes 30 years to know the community and be a part of it." He said, "White people come and go. It takes time to build trust and be considered part of the community." So I'm only 10 years into working in the community. And when I think of resilience in Warm Springs, I think of my team at the Community Action Team. These are people who are in and of the community. They come to work every day and fight the good fight, and work on behalf of that community. And they've experienced its hardships. At the core of each person is this association with the community and the culture, this connection to the past, a past that includes things like genocide and forced relocation and boarding schools and lots of really bad things. Yet these folks show up every day and provide hope and inspiration to the people of the Warm Springs community. So I'm honored and proud to work with them. These are all the different things we do. And I'm not going to obviously go into all of those, but I will talk about the ones highlighted in green here, the commissary project and those things that we do relating to solar and the environment in Warm Springs. And I'd like to show this video, and I'm pretty sure there's no volume for it. So I'd like to ask Hannah, if possible, to show this video because there's no sound. Is that possible? Okay, I have to stop sharing. Can you see this?
We are interrupting history. We are reclaiming our story. We are retelling our future. The Warm Springs Commissary Project is led by the Warm Springs Community Action Team. We are moving and restoring the oldest building on the reservation and turning it into a small business incubator for tribal entrepreneurs. The commissary is a launch pad for successful local businesses. With each business we create or strengthen, the more resilient our community becomes. The commissary will be a place for doing business, launching business, and growing business. It will be a place of celebration, community, and opportunity. For the local community, the commissary will offer retail space, co-working space, food truck pod, commercial kitchen, outdoor market, pavilion spaces, a classroom and conference room, a business incubator program, a food truck training program, and business support services. For visitors, the commissary will offer retail shopping, local and Native American art gallery, food carts and micro restaurants, outdoor recreation and pavilion space, and conference rooms for regional business activity. The commissary will be an economic engine nurturing Native-owned businesses and entrepreneurs and uplifting the community in the process. Much more than a building, the commissary is the anchor project of a larger emerging downtown business district. Its outside spaces and multiple uses extend its value far beyond its walls. Community process is at the core of this project. The commissary will anchor the local community and visitors to the cultural, social, and economic identities of the Confederated Tribes of Warm Springs. The commissary will create an entrepreneurial ecosystem and increase autonomy and resiliency through authentic placemaking. The commissary, where culture, economy, and community converge.
Okay, there we go. Okay, can you hear me? Good. So I'll try to run through this a little bit quickly. We've talked a lot about how the commissary is a project to promote business on the reservation and to grow the economy. And one thing I would like to mention very quickly is this is the oldest building on the reservation. It used to be a depot and distribution point that was used by the US government to give out commodity food and supplies. And because of that, because these folks, the tribal members came from places of abundance, like along the Columbia River, and then they're moved to this place in a desert, basically, and could not fend for themselves, the commissary symbolizes dependence and oppression to people on the reservation. So we've taken this building, we've moved it from its former location, basically ripped it out of the ground, put it in a space next to Highway 26 when you'll be able to drive by when you go from Bend to Portland and see it. And what you'll see is this building with all these features that are mentioned in that video. And you'll also see solar panels, big giant Stracker panels they're called, which will power the site. And I'm going to skip through this and go to the next slide. It's stuck for some reason. There we go. These are the things that were mentioned in the film, the features of the commissary. We think that the commissary is going to represent all these things. many of which are vital and critical to the Warm Springs community growing and becoming stronger. I'm going to focus on the environmental harmony piece at the bottom. And think about this, if you take this whole site and you make it a net zero energy building and site, what does that mean for the people there? It will be the first net zero energy building on the reservation. We're doing this because we want to do things in line with 7 generations thinking and sustainable development paradigms. And the reason and the rationale is that we want to have an environmental and economic impact. And there's a psychological impact too. You feel a lot better when you're working in an environmentally friendly space. And I think that tribal members will certainly appreciate that as well. Our original goal was to do the commissary project and make it a net zero energy site and provide local business owners with lower operating costs and training for community members. But our goals have grown in the last couple of years. Some of this due to relationships and a network that we've formed. In 2021, the Portland First UMC's Planet Church team, and that church provided us with funding for project planning for the commissary, but eventually that came to be project planning not only for the commissary, but for our own building, for a community solar project that would create a 1.8 megawatt array to provide power for up to 500 homes for low income, low asset people on the reservation, and also for a battery storage project, much like the one described by the folks from New Orleans. And all of this has been going really fast lately, where we've been able to raise funds for this, where our capacity has been built, where we're learning how to do this stuff, how to manage projects. And it's been really exciting. We've got enough funds now in place to fund our own building. That's our building. I like the artwork on it, actually. In March, next month, we're putting solar on our building. And we have half the money in place. We have all the money in place for our building. And we have about half of it in place for the commissary. And the project planning for the other projects is going very well. And we're very excited about it. And I would be happy to meet up with you again at some point and talk about and show you the different kinds of things we're doing out in Warm Springs to boost energy resiliency and the kinds of projects we're doing with our community. So thank you very much. I did want to share with you these 2 links. If you want to see what happened on the day we moved the building back in April, it was a very fascinating day when you actually do a structural move of a 126-year-old building. So if you have questions about our work, please feel free to reach out to me. And thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Chris. Really appreciate you sharing with us and the exciting work that you're doing. And we'll make sure to make those links available to everyone by email after this event, so you can learn more about that project and follow up with any questions that you have. And as Chris mentioned, John Pitney, who's on our Creation Justice Committee, has been involved in that project and is also running our Oregon Interfaith Solar campaign. And so if that's something that you all are interested in learning more about, that is one way to become more resilient and serve our communities in case of power outages, to have solar plus backup storage batteries. And that's only one way. It's not the only way, but it's an important way that we can serve our communities in the case of climate related disasters. And also we can start with small groups getting together and getting to know their neighbors and learning how to participate in their neighborhood more fully in economic aspects, as Chris was talking about, as well as disaster preparedness. So I wanted to introduce you to Sarah Lose from the Oregon Synod, who is working with me to do a cohort that we can start kind of working on these things as congregations in the state. So Sarah, would you share about the cohort with us?
Yeah, sure. Thanks so much, Therese. So inspiring, Chris. Also, thank you for that. Again, my name is Sarah Lose. I use she, her pronouns, and I coordinate the Oregon Synods, the Lutherans in the state disaster and climate resilience work. And I'm here today to share about the new Resilient Communities cohort that we're working on with Therese, and it's about to launch in just a couple of weeks. I don't know all of you, but I wonder whether maybe you and a couple of leaders in your congregation have a heart for justice and might be wondering how to get more people from your community engaged, or how to integrate your passion for climate justice with your commitments to racial justice. Maybe your faith community has already started down the road of disaster preparedness, or just finished a climate justice book group. Or maybe you've taken some steps to make your building more energy efficient, but you might be wondering now, what's next? Maybe you've had a taste of the power of community in the wake of a wildfire or a flood or a heat dome, and experienced what's possible when neighbors come together to help neighbors in times of crises. And maybe you're wondering how to build on that experience to help your community not just survive, but to thrive in the day-to-day, as well as during climate disruptions and disasters. And maybe if you're like me, you wake up some mornings like I do, and you hug your kiddos or your grandbabies tight, and you think about what you're going to say when they ask you 20 years from now to tell you again that story of how you helped us turn the tide on the climate breakdown and joined together with your neighbors to phase out fossil fuels and clean up the air and welcome back the salmon to our streams and rivers here in Oregon. And if any of these describe you, or maybe even if they don't, I want to invite you to consider joining the Resilient Communities cohort. And Charisse, you might want to put up this slide now, back up. In the cohort, we're going to be bringing together teams of 3 or more leaders from faith communities across the state. We've got Pendleton, folks in Prineville, in Brookings, and Astoria. And we're going to commit to learning and unlearning and acting together in our work towards disaster and climate resilience. Teams will meet all together once a month for 5 months, February through June, for 2 hours on Zoom. And during that first hour, we'll hear stories of resilience from Indigenous and Black and Brown neighbors and leaders and friends in the region. And during the second hour, we'll focus on concrete tools and practices for resilience that we can use and implement in our own congregations. In addition, each team is going to be matched with a companion who will meet and connect with teams in between the monthly gatherings. And so companions will help accompany teams as we discern how to translate the practices that we're learning about in the cohort into our own communities and contexts. And companions will also work with teams to develop actionable plans to become more active participants in networks and hubs for resilience in our local communities and watersheds and neighborhoods. So we will be launching soon, and we have a couple of slots left. I'm going to put the registration link for the cohort and my contact info in the chat, and encourage you to reach out if you want to learn more. I'm happy to answer any questions you have, and also to help you think about how to build your team. And look forward to hopefully walking together with some of you in the next few months as we go deeper into the work and commitments that we've all been hearing about and learning about today.
Thank you so much, Sarah. And I'm really excited to see how that cohort goes as we gather teams. And maybe this is something where you've heard exciting things so far today, and you're thinking, how could our congregation, how could our faith community, how could our neighborhood participate in building climate resilience? And what would be some of the first steps we would need to take? So one of those first steps is joining this cohort and getting involved in making some plans. And so if that sounds exciting to you, please follow up and we'll send out that information again by email. So we're going to transition here with a song, and then the next half hour of our time will be learning about some ways to get involved in advocacy around environment and climate related policies this legislative session. And so we're going to listen to a song by a couple of my friends, and take this opportunity if you need to stand up and stretch and just be aware of what your body needs for this 5 minutes of this song, and listen and allow this song to be a time for you to reflect on what you might be drawn to or led to do as a result of what you've been hearing so far. So we'll listen to this song together and be back in a few minutes together to talk about advocacy.
Hello, my name is Tiwani. I'm from the Samnasho Taichpum tribe, Central Oregon, Warm Springs, occupied Warm Springs territory, which would be Samnasho Taichpum, Waskapum, and Tenainopum. And we currently have the Paiutes, the Numu, who currently reside on the reservation with us. We stand in solidarity with prayer. We stand in solidarity with everything that's good, with the earth, water. Chush Iwawak Ishwit means water is life. And we're here to sing a song. This is my partner, Ninokasi, from the Anishinaabe Nation.
Thank you so much to our friends, Tiwani and Nenokasi, for that song that grounds us in the music of this place and reminds us of the music that has been played in this state by the people who have stewarded it for so long. I hope that gave you some time to reflect on what you're most excited about and passionate about, and how you might work together with your community to build climate resilience in your own neighborhood and region. So one of the ways that also makes a big difference is to be involved in advocacy efforts. And we have a couple of representatives with us today that we're excited to hear from. And I appreciate you being here, Representative Pham and Representative Gamba. And our Ecumenical Ministries of Oregon and Oregon Interfaith Power and Light have been working on several bills to prepare for this session, getting these bills ready, particularly a bill about divesting our treasury from fossil fuels, and working on a climate resilience hub bill. And we're also supporting a number of other bills throughout this session. And so we are working with a bunch of other groups to make sure that these important bills pass, as well as some other priorities that you'll hear about from these representatives today. And there's many bills that we're working on and that are exciting things that are going on related to environment and climate justice. But we'll just mention a few of them today. But if this is something that you're excited about, we do have an Oregon Interfaith Power and Light advocacy team that we encourage you to get involved in. And so we'll put the link in the chat for you to learn more. There it is. And also we will send that out by email. So our neighborhood things are one level of influence that we have, and changing our state's policies is a much bigger impact that we can have, because it makes sure that all of the things that we do together as a state are working together towards our goals of creating a sustainable and just environment into the future. So we hope you'll join us in that. And I would like to first invite Representative Gamba to share with us about a couple of bills that he's working on that are our priority bills. So Representative Gamba, take it away and share with us. Thank you.
Well, good afternoon. Happy Sunday, everybody. Good to see you all. I think a really big one that we're all excited about and are concerned that will be difficult to get passed is the divestment bill. Oregon has one of the 12 largest retirement funds in the country, interestingly. That's $137 billion in investments. And at this point, roughly at least 5.3 billion of that is in fossil fuels, which again, out of those 12 is more than most of them have. Interestingly, we also our investments are less powerful than the funds that have fewer fossil fuel investments. So we aren't doing as well as most of the rest of those retirement funds. I think the reason for divestment is probably pretty clear to all of you, but just touch on it in case it isn't. Businesses run based on their stock value, and the more entities divest from fossil fuels, the more that sends a market signal that we are and should be moving away from fossil fuels. So it's a very important piece in the climate fight, and frankly, right at this moment in time, I think it's also just makes good sense. I've had Republicans tell me that they believe we should be reducing our investments in fossil fuels just because they see the writing on the wall that those are going to go down in value. So the bill that we're working on has several aspects to it. It calls for no new investments in fossil fuels. It calls for a release of a public list of all portfolio holdings, transparency to transparently phase out all current fossil fuel investments, and move to climate safe investments. All of these make sense both from an investment standpoint as well as from a climate standpoint. Treasurer Reed has been opposed to this concept since before he was elected treasurer. And it's going to be a tough uphill fight. He recently wrote a very scathing letter to the legislature about this, which we responded to. And it got a little bit of press, but not the kind of press it should have. So the worrisome part at this point is, at least hearing from the Senate side, there doesn't seem to be a Senate appetite in this. So we could pass it in the House and then have it fail in the Senate. So right now, we should all be concentrating our efforts on the Senate. Let's see, what was the other bill you wanted me to talk about? I've forgotten now.
The natural climate solutions.
Oh, yes. Another really important aspect. So this is not commonly known, but a lot of people who are doing deep work on climate believe that the single largest impact that Oregon has on the climate worldwide is how we utilize our forests. They should be one of the largest carbon sinks on the planet. I think top 3, if I'm recalling correctly. They aren't currently because of the way that they've been managed for over a century. So coming into the House, I had intentions to begin to work on that. It is a tough nut to crack. It's the forests with the biggest problems are also owned privately, and many of those by Wall Street firms who only care about next quarter's profits, not the future of humanity. So there are 2 bills in this session, mine and then the Senate version. The Senate version is predominantly working to offer financial benefits to entities that are willing to start both farming and managing their forests in ways that naturally sequester more carbon. The House bill goes a little further. We're not actually quite done writing it, but it will have more sticks, not just carrots in it. There is a really important piece in both bills, and that is to cause data to be created around the how much we are or aren't sequestering carbon in our forests. So both bills are really important. The House bill will be a harder lift. It's gonna draw a lot of fire from the other side, but they are neither one as far as we need to go in addressing the way our forests are used, but they're good first steps. Thanks.
Yeah, thank you so much. We really appreciate your partnership on the Divest Oregon Coalition and your good work in Milwaukee prior to your legislative endeavors in getting Milwaukee to divest. So we're hopeful that we can do some good work this session together, and appreciate you doing great work on that, as well as Representative Pham, who is our chief sponsor on that bill. So thanks to you both, and appreciate that big effort that is one of the largest impacts that we can make with our funds, our collective funds in the state, as well as the natural climate solutions. As you said, that's a big climate impact as well. So thank you so much. And next I'll invite Gloria Ochoa Sandoval from Unite Oregon to share with us for a couple minutes about the climate resilient or community resilience hubs bill that we're working on together with a great coalition that Representative Pham and Representative Marsh are the sponsors of.
Hi, folks. Thank you for having me. Oh, okay. I think you can hear me. It's glitching a little bit. My name is Gloria Ochoa Sandoval. I use she, her pronouns, and I'm the policy director at Unite Oregon. As Sharice mentioned, we are working on a community resilience hub bill to address climate disaster and community resiliency within that. So we have put together a coalition, and we are chief sponsored by Representative Con Pham and Representative Pam Marsh, which is really exciting. So we have been working together on further developing this bill. So I have pretty good amount of the concept to share with you. I will just start off by saying we do not have a financial component to share yet. And I know some folks will be asking about that. So we will share it once we have it. So as of now, community resilience hubs will actually be both a hub and a network. So the goal is to divide up the state according to need. We do not have our final districts yet or what that might look like, but the funds in the districts will be managed by Oregon Health Authority, which you'll also hear me say OHA. So we will be putting one physical hub within each area to centralize resources for community members. Our hope is that this hub is also a safe space during climate disasters, but it is also to address befores and afters, which is essentially year-round. But the goal is to be able to preemptively provide resources for folks to be in better positions, to be prepared to take on the disasters that we know are coming. We also want to be able to address things within the moment, in which we would also work with a network. The network can also be year-round, but it'll be most important during times of active disaster. And that's where we've talked to EMO about being able to open up ministries or other physical buildings during times of disasters as like temporary shelters and support systems as part of these networks. But the goal would be that anyone that can provide similar resources that we will be having in the hub or with the same mission alignment, that they'll be able to be recommended within the hub and be sort of like an allied network so that folks can have centralized resources, but if they are in a further location, have access to other spaces. And the goal for after it is a lot more recovery, making sure we can build folks back up, give folks the resources they need. And we'll also be leaning heavily on mental wellness and making sure that folks have community and partnership and have the space to be able to emotionally heal from what a lot of these disasters cause, which is very heavy trauma. So we are super excited to be putting this bill forward. We are aware that there are a ton of other small like programs across the state trying to do the same thing. So we do look and working in partnership with organizations, individuals, government entities. Our goal is not to reinvent the wheel, but rather really organize ourselves with the community so that we are just that much stronger when going through disasters like such. So yeah, that's our goal. We're super excited. We'll hopefully have a bunch of public media to share with you next week, and that way we can invite everyone to also support us and share testimony and such. But I think that's all I have to share. I do want to add, now that I see you, Representative Pham, if there's anything you would like to add on.
I think that's a great summary. I'm just really proud to be a co-sponsor with Rep. Marsh and super strongly support, of course, the divestment bill as well. We've got some really exciting bills this session. And yeah, I'm happy to chat. If I don't know if now we're passing it to me now, or I think I'm supposed to speak next, but I'll let Sharice. I don't know the exact order. So thank you so much for all of the coalition's work. I'm super excited to collaborate.
Thank you for helping us lead the way. Yeah, I think that's all I had. So I'll go ahead and pass it back to Sharice. Thanks, folks.
Thank you so much, Gloria. And we really appreciate the coalition of folks who are putting together this Community Resilience Hubs bill and the legislators who are working with us on this. And, we've been talking so far about climate resilience and how our faith communities can participate in building up neighborhood climate resilience. So really excited about this bill that will help us do that in a more organized and well-funded way, that our faith communities can participate in the efforts that will be going on across the state as we get this bill funded and off and running. So thanks so much, Gloria and Representative Pham, on that one. And so finally, I would love to introduce Representative Pham, who is providing so much leadership on environmental justice and climate bills around the state. We really appreciate your leadership in being able to support a lot of the bills you're working on. So invited you today to share with us about some of your priorities.
Great. Well, I apologize. I'm on phone and computer. I am having some technical difficulties, but I am excited to chat about some of my transportation priorities. Of course, I'm a strong supporter of the Divest Bill, the Community Resilience Hubs, natural and working lands. But, a lot of times traditionally our climate movement hasn't always been deeply coordinated with the transportation justice movement. And so I was hoping to chat a little bit more about my vision for transportation, why I think it's so critical that climate activists are really integrating transportation into our analysis. I'm going to try to share my screen, but it's, I don't know if I'll be able to share it. Oh, okay. Oh, it's working. Okay, sorry. Let's see. Now I have to figure out how to go backwards. Okay. Does this look okay? Hold on. This is, there we go. Let me try this. Okay, it looks like you're getting my whole view, but that's okay. So I wanted to just share these slides because I think, transportation is where I see the intersection of so many of our values, whether it's around public health and safety, around greenhouse gas emissions and climate justice, access to opportunity, and, fiscal accountability and responsibility. As many of you know, transportation emissions are one of the biggest sources of climate pollution in our state, at least in terms of, man-made emissions, and they've been increasing. While we've made really great progress in, the electricity sector, and we're going to tackle buildings, we have actually gone in the opposite direction for transportation. And we know this has real impacts, particularly for BIPOC, low-income communities. Communities that live along more high traffic corridors experience diesel pollution that is 2 to 3 times higher than average. And that impacts everything from asthma to low birth weights, and even the risk of stroke and heart disease. We're also in the midst of a real epidemic in traffic fatalities. Oregon actually has the 10th most dangerous roads in the country, and we are experiencing our highest rate of pedestrian, bicyclists, and fatalities last year. And then, of course, this year is on track with, just even though in the first month, we've already seen, I can record 4 traffic deaths just in Portland alone, but I know that there's even more outside of my Southeast Portland area. I guess I will just pause here because I'm sharing some of these slides. I don't know how much time, Charisse, that you wanted me to talk. Actually, I'm sorry. I was trying to text to see how much time I have, but I will say that this is really personal to me. I have 82nd Avenue goes through my district. Powell Boulevard goes through my district. I am just tired as a legislator of having to issue condolences. Now, I've had to issue it almost every month, if not at least every couple of months, to different families, and it's avoidable. These are not accidents. These are not, the fault of the victims. It is very much by design in our transportation system that really privileges cars over people. And Charisse, how much time do I have? I actually don't know.
Maybe like 2 more minutes. How does that work?
Sounds great. Okay, so I'll just skip through like we're basically facing major financial difficulties because our gas tax is declining, which is a good thing. People are moving towards more fuel efficient cars, but that means we have to be really smart about our transportation investments. We know what we need to do: invest in public transit, active transportation, electrification, maintaining our roads and making them safer instead of expanding road miles. But unfortunately, that's the opposite direction we're going. We're investing billions and billions of dollars into roadway and freeway expansions, even as we claim that we're taking climate action. And so, I'm going to be really fighting for a new I-5 bridge that is right-sized, because the bridge itself is just 25% of the cost of the total so-called bridge replacement project. There's, 5 miles of freeway expansion, a light rail project, which is great, but I just want to make sure that we're really keeping our costs in check so that we can actually invest in the things that we know we need, which is bike, pedestrian investments, safety investments on dangerous orphan highways, making sure that public transit is actually fully invested statewide. And yeah, I just, want to make sure that we're also, as we consider tolling, are really thinking about a really progressive, equitable tolling plan, because, this is going to have huge impacts on our most vulnerable commuters. And if it's just tolling so that we can pay for freeways and pay to, go 30 years in debt for more freeway expansions, that's something that as climate activists, we need to make sure that we're not burdening future generations with having to pay back our excesses. And, this really 1960s vision of what a transportation system should look like. So some of my bill priorities are looking at equity in tolling, making sure that we're mitigating against some of the tolling impacts. So making sure that some of the toll revenue goes to public transit, it's going to the local jurisdictions that are going to have to suffer from more traffic from diversions. I think we need to democratize our Oregon Transportation Commission, expand the number, make sure that there are some voices of people who don't drive or who are impacted by the inequities in our system actually have a voice in shaping it. Also have a bike bus bill to make sure that we give flexibility to local school districts if they want to pay for stipends, so that parents can do walking school buses or biking school buses, that there's that flexibility, especially in the midst of a bus driver shortage. And I'm also just looking at how we can make sure that there's greenhouse gas emissions analysis with all of our transportation plans, so that our transportation funding is really aligned with our climate action plans. And with that, I'm going to stop sharing, and we can, I'm so happy to be here with all of you.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate that, and all of your leadership on all of those things, and keeping all of those things in front of us in ways that we can take action on. So once again, I encourage everyone to sign up for our Oregon Interfaith Power and Light advocacy team, and we'll have opportunities throughout the legislative session to speak up to your legislators about all of these important issues, and make your voices heard, and let your legislators know that these are things that you care about as people of faith and as people who live in their districts. So really encourage you to get involved in this important work as well. So thank you to all three of you for taking time out of your day to be with us for this summit, and really appreciate all the work that you're doing and this busy legislative session that you're working through. So thank you so much. So we're almost to the end of our online portion of our summit today, and we have a brief video from our new Ecumenical Ministries of Oregon president that we're going to show, because he is supportive of this work of climate justice. We'll show you that now.
Hi everybody, my name is Frank So, the new president of Ecumenical Ministries of Oregon. It's a pleasure to be here with you at the Oregon Interfaith Earth Summit. Prior to coming to EMO, I worked for the U.S. Agency for International Development in Central America. With migration being such a hot topic, people have asked, why are people coming to the United States? One main reason that doesn't get talked about a lot is the devastation caused by climate change. I have seen communities uprooted from their homes and had to move or flee or become internally displaced people because of the changes that we're seeing in the climate that we have not seen in decades before. And that's why it's so important to be here with you right now and be here at this summit. The work that you're doing is EMO's vision. It is EMO's mission to advocate for peace, justice, and the integrity of creation. So thank you very much, and I look forward to the outputs of this summit.
Thank you, Frank, for your support, and we are excited about him joining EMO and his leadership. And I realize we're a couple minutes past our time of 3:30, so if you'll, in your local areas, bear with us for just a few minutes of closing from Reverend Rashinda Fairhurst, who is at the Medford location, and she's the chairperson of our Creation Justice Committee, who will offer some closing thoughts and meditation to send us out.
Well, here we are, almost through our Zoom program, and so grateful for all those who have spoken and shared, to the representatives who have joined us, to those here who have told their stories, and to all of you who I hope are going to share some of your stories together. I hope you feel lifted for the reality in front of us, the work in front of us, and the joy and hope also that is right in front of us. But the root of that is that this caring work, this work for creation, this call on the heart of so many, including myself, to step into creation justice and do what good we can, all the ways we can. After all, I am Methodist. So that's my tradition. And I'm so glad for all the folks representing all the very many traditions here today as well. So I want to just give a little bit of a plug for the Creation Justice Committee. This is a group of marvelous volunteers. Also, a big thank you to Cherise Bach and Julia, who is our new Jesuit volunteer, who work at this all the time, who bring their goodwill, their good labor, and their good efforts, and what results we have seen of that. So thank you to the volunteers and the staff of the committee. Thank you to EMO for really envisioning and caring about this program as well. I am also going to invite you, if you feel a call to Creation Justice Ministry, if you feel this and you would like to be part of the Ecumenical Ministries of Oregon Creation Justice team, if you want to just actually connect to be part of that mailing list or part of that effort or on the committee itself, please reach out to me or Charisse. I'm just really glad to welcome folks and hear their call and their passion for this work. There's just so much room because there's just so much that frankly needs to be done, and it's right in front of us to do. So the good news is we do that together. I also want to say that this work needs funding. So, unfortunately, creation justice and the imperative and urgency that we suddenly face, it's not part of a legacy program. There's very few legacy funding streams that identify this because this has risen up. So if you can give towards the Creation Justice Oregon Interfaith Power and Light, that is really, we would be very thankful and grateful. So to do that as a recurrent gift as well helps us stabilize our budget so that we know what we have to work with. Even if it's a little bit or if it's a lot, all of it really helps and really helps us meet those funding gaps because that's just really needed. I want to close us with something for us to sort of balance and center with as we leave. One of the Creation Justice team members, his name is Frank Granshaw. And like many of us, he writes as a way of helping heal him and move him through these hard pathways as we deal with what is true about the urgency that we face, but also the love of this good world. And he has written this little meditation and I want to share it. Creator companion, teach me balance. Teach me to live life with gratitude for the messy richness of creation while striving not to turn a blind eye to its gritty side. Teach me hope that involves gratitude without guarantees, that warmly embraces both beginnings and endings, joy and grief. Teach me to balance in the wind. It is easy to know gratitude when life is comfortable and rich. It is not so easy to remember it when life is not so bright. In both instances, it is easy to wall ourselves off from others. To forget that which is hard can deepen rather than harden us. Creator companion, teach me balance. Any blessings to all of you. Amen.
Thank you so much, Reverend Rashenda. And thank you to all of you in your local areas who have been part of organizing your local summit gatherings and who are sharing with each other and showing up and beginning or continuing the process of building more resilient neighborhoods with your faith communities. I hope this has been inspiring and encouraging to feel connected to everyone around the state that's doing this work. And I hope the rest of your time together in person is filled with joy and determination and encouragement to continue in this good work. Thank you so much. That concludes the online portion of the Oregon Interfaith Earth Summit for 2023. Thanks for attending.